Here we are at Virtual Unity, virtually at the Fledge. And we're going to start out this part with a little music courtesy of Eddie Watkins Jr. I think you'll recognize it. Make sure that person's 6 feet away from you. We come together, we come together in the name of love. We come together, we come together, we come together in the name of love. Come together, we come together, we come together in the name of love. Every walk of life, the dream come. Love the God in each other. Together, together, come together in the name of love. Together. Well, that's a familiar song. It's not us singing it, but that's the original artist, Eddie Watkins Jr. So it's kind of a fun way to start out the morning. Well, this is Palm Sunday. And Richard Rohr, who wrote the book that we've been using for the last few weeks, The Universal Christ, wrote that God comes to us disguised as our lives. Disguised as our lives. To me, that was quite an amazing thought. But when I thought about it a little bit more, we always talk about there's only one power and one presence, God the good. So if there's only one, of course, God has to be expressed as our lives. I just didn't recognize it, that this too is God. This too is ultimately good. So this is Palm Sunday, and we are not together as we normally would. We're not sharing palms as we normally would. I'm just a little piece of equipment in here. Pardon me. When we're doing this stuff technically alone in the studio, we wear many hats as we're going through here. So excuse me. It certainly is a different Palm Sunday than we've ever had before, and hopefully one different than we'll ever have again. But Palm Sunday is the start of a week of transformation. It's not only in the Christian traditions a Holy Week, but also on Wednesday begins Passover, which is a time of celebration of when the Jews gained their freedom from the Egyptians, where they had been slave labor. So it's a week that starts with a great celebration, like in the Daily Word today, Hosanna, that Jesus was coming to town. The people came out and praised him, recognizing the light of his truth, the peace and the love that he taught. There was great expectation that all of a sudden the world was going to change and become wonderful and all things would be set right. But the week didn't go that way. It was quite a horrific week, quite a trying week, if you will. Jesus went into the temple and upset with the money changers there. They were, because you made gifts to the at the temple along with your prayers. So they might be selling pigeons or different various things. And people came from all over the world too to go to the temple in Jerusalem. So there were money changers that were actually cheating the people coming in there. And really irked Jesus off to see this was happening. He overturned the tables and he started a bit of a, not only a mini riot there, but a bit of a revolution, and certainly upset some people politically on the scene that he made there. Of course, later in the week, he had what we call today the Last Supper, when he met with his disciples and other friends, and they shared Passover dinner and shared different times together, knowing that one of his closest people was going to betray him to the political authorities of his day. And then later that night, he goes out to Gethsemane for some time of prayer and meditation. And he brought some of his most trusted friends with him, and they fell asleep during this time that he felt very alone. There are times in all of our lives where we just feel very alone. And of course, the week ends with his sentencing and the crucifixion until we get to next Sunday, and we'll talk about that then. But this whole idea of Holy Week, especially this time of year, with what's happening in our world right now, I was thinking, when is the last time I had a big celebration? It was March 15th. It happened to be my birthday, and I was down in Costa Rica before everything changed and the world got a little more constricted in what we could do. I had great expectations of a couple of weeks down there in the sun, and it didn't turn out that way. But ultimately, it's all good. Everything that's important is still here and still intact. Maybe not the way that I would like it, maybe not the way you would like it, but we're certainly having a great opportunity to grow and to learn and to do things a little bit differently. Excuse me. So I don't know how many of you have read Paulo Coelho. He wrote The Alchemist, and he wrote this really incredible little paragraph about Holy Week I wanted to share with you. He said, when we least expect it, life sets us up a challenge to our courage and our willingness to change. At such a moment, there is no point in pretending that nothing has happened or in saying that we are not ready. Does any of this sound familiar? This is really holy. We're in a real long Holy Week here, because we just can't pretend nothing's happened or nothing's changed, because it certainly has. He says the challenge will not wait. Life does not look back. And he says a week is more than enough time for us to decide whether or not to accept our destiny. Whether or not to accept our destiny. Each of us does have that choice right now of adhering to really good practices to stay safe and to keep our friends and loved ones safe. It's funny, like right now, the way we say I love you to somebody, instead of giving them a hug, a kiss, those normal physical affections we would show, the way we say I love you is by keeping 6 feet away. Kind of an unusual string of events, if you will. Well, I know I myself feel great sadness about this sense of separation, of just connecting with people physically, of that warm hug, even the handshakes, things that we all took for granted, and now we have to abstain from them. And in Richard Rohr's book, he talks about the great sadness of God. And a lot of us are feeling sadness for any number of things. People that have died and we weren't able to celebrate their life in a normal fashion. People that are being born, or we weren't able to have showers, or not able to have birthday parties. Graduations have been canceled at all different kinds of schools. Even there's a question if we're going to have our ministerial ordination in June. So all the things that we expected as just a given seems to be in abeyance right now. And in this great deep sadness that many of us feel, this sadness for an apparent loss, certainly our expectations weren't met. But in that suffering, there becomes a softening of our hearts. Our hearts really have a tendency to be guarded, because we've all been hurt in the past and we have a tendency to guard them. But when we go through the suffering ourselves, when we understand that other people are also having this kind of suffering, something within us softens and reaches out in great different ways. And it's really important that we allow ourselves in our sadness, in our moments of darkness, to recognize that this, at the ultimate level, is a spiritual suffering. And if we resist it, if we resist what we're feeling, it can really be detrimental to our health. And we know that it lowers our immune system. We know that it makes us feel tired and cranky. It doesn't help if we happen to be sequestered with another person in the house. It just really takes its toll on us. So the truth that we need to understand is that in the suffering, we can't go through it alone without paying a very high price. And of course, what we're going through it with is the universe, that oneness. We're going through it with God. This is the great suffering of God. Because if there is only one, the same sadness, the same darkness, the same unmet expectations is being experienced by virtually every person on this planet right now. I don't know when we have had such a universal experience of change that is totally beyond our control. Life itself is really kind of ambiguous in its process. We like to pretend it's very linear. You know, we're born, we go to grade school, we go to college, we get married, whatever that linear progression is. But in truth, there's a lot of life that is not that well defined. It really is kind of soft around the edges, and sometimes even really hard to put a label on about what it is. But I will say this, is that we are all in this together. And as hard as it is for each of us as individuals, it's as hard for everybody else. So it's nice to know that no, the universe is not irked at you and making you suffer extra special hard, that everybody is having this opportunity to grow through a really another frustrating, perhaps, experience in this ambiguous process that we call life. See, each and every one of us have secret hurts. We have great sorrows that we carry with us, that we likely have not shared with many, if any, other people. But in knowing this is an opportunity to come together. We don't have to say what those sorrows and hurts are, but knowing that we all have this common experience of a world that has changed, that everything we thought a month ago is no longer holds true when it comes to what we might expect to do today or tomorrow or in a week. So that we really, though all of us are suffering within our oneness, it is a suffering of God, the great suffering of God. And we know that God ultimately is joy and love. And if we move through the suffering, we will be able to get to another place where we can find the gifts, where we can grow spiritually and deeper and have hearts that are larger than we could ever have imagined. So there's kind of a strength in knowing that there is a solidarity and joy, as Winnie song was talking about, wishing us that great strength within us. And I think one of the ways that we really get it, that we're all in this together, is finding that shared meaning. If not with another person, certainly a shared meaning with God, and maybe in going into Holy Week, we really could make that connection with God, with Spirit, understanding the great sacrifices, whether we're talking about Passover and the firstborns of the Egyptians that died during that process, or whether we look at the Holy Week and Jesus's journey, the Passion Walk, the physical suffering that he went through, and certainly the emotional suffering that his mother and his friends went through. There is a universal quality of longing in all humanity. And I think it is this yearning to connect back to the oneness, to remember that we are one, that it is an expression of God in this individual expression. Reality expressed with personality is one way of putting it. Spirituality actually becomes this individualized personality in many, many different forms here on earth. And during the suffering, like I said, the space of our heart really becomes softened. The space in our heart becomes more compassionate. We can have empathy for a person, understanding they've gone through something very serious, loss of a family member, loss of a friend. But until we've experienced it ourselves, we can't truly know what it's like to have that experience, because we're having this communal experience of suffering and unknown, this great uncertainty, it allows us to be more compassionate one to another, to be a little easier, a little kinder. Because, boy, when you understand, it's really hard to be cruel to somebody else when you really understand what's going on. Brian Andreas is a favorite artist of mine, and there's one of his pieces that particularly moved me. It said, "I decided to help the world. And every place I went, there I was needed." And in this time of uncertainty and certainly struggle for so many people on so many different areas, when we decide within ourselves to be that help wherever we go, trust me, wherever we are, there we will be needed, and there will be something for us to do. So Palm Sunday you can look at as the beginning of the end. It's the beginning of the end of a state of consciousness. It's the beginning of the end of things as we've known it. The whole idea of going to Jerusalem, Jesus taking him and his friends going up to Jerusalem, it's up on a mountain. It represents us going to a higher state of consciousness. And when we go to that higher state of consciousness, we leave behind those things that we thought about ourselves and about others previous to that. We are ready for this mental change. And to enter into this holy week, a week where we remember that we are whole no matter what the outer circumstances, it really is an honest perception of what is happening. An honest perception of what is happening, that we are consciously going into that valley of the shadow of death. We are consciously going into that transformative process of which we will never be the same again as we emerge from what we're going through as a world community, and as we emerge from what each of us individually are, each individual expression of what it is that is happening right now. And as we willingly go through this transformation, we know that something new will be born. And next week, symbolically, is the beginning of the new beginning, the beginning of whatever that new thing is that is being born. So let's talk just about a couple basic concepts. One is God disguised as us. Yeah, God disguised as us. And you say that, and we can have some resistance to that. Okay, intellectually, I know the Christ is within me, the light is within me, but it's really hard for our personality to grasp that idea of perfection. So I want to remind you about this. It's about being connected. It's never about being correct. So it's not about being correct, it's about being connected. Connected to our source, connected to the universe, and connected one to each other in the very best possible way that we can. Because this is really God seen as reality with personality. So all the different expressions of that infinite power and presence as the many personalities you run across in our lives. And then there is the divine personality, that God stuff, that universal power and presence. And what we are learning during this time is how to be reflective of that presence, not reactive to the outer world around us. And when I say not reactive to the outer world, okay, how about a little less reactive to the outer world? Because it's really hard to hear a news report of awful numbers that are daunting, numbers that are bigger than I normally talk about in the course of a day, and not to be a little bit reactive, that little fear, the pulling back, whatever. But as long as our willingness to be reflective of that divine personality, that perfection within us, is greater than our reaction, we are making movement. We are making great headway into that new thing being born. And one way to judge if we kind of got it in the right balance of being more reflective than reactive is every time we choose love, or every time we choose to positively connect with someone or something, we are in touch with that divine personality. Every time we choose love, every time we choose to positively connect with someone else, that is the divine coming through us. And third thought for Palm Sunday was the example of Jesus, the story of Jesus in the Gospels of Palm Sunday. In the Gospel of John, he says a lot of really interesting things. But the one that stands out for me today is when he said, I've told you these things so that in me you have peace. So that in me you have peace. Knowing that light is within us will bring us peace, that we're not separate from God. God is all of us and we are part of God. And he said, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I've overcome the world. Take heart. I've overcome the world. So this week, perhaps it's about learning to be brave in a new way, to take a deep breath and go, I'm willing to let go of the way things were. I'm willing to do things differently. Perhaps there's ways to be more compassionate to people in our family, in our neighborhood, or around the world. Perhaps there's ways to be more compassionate with our earth, to be gentler and kinder with the planet, with everything from our garbage to the utilities that we use. Just new ways. I don't know what they are for you, but you will know what's right for you. It's really about being so willing to allow the divine to flow through us that we can get caught up in this kind of cosmic sweep of love. The sweep of cosmic love. Isn't that a great concept? Getting caught up in the sweep of cosmic love. So really it's about us consciously taking a challenge that with so many unknowns, I don't know what is known. It seems like everything is unknown. Understanding that there will be a death to our old consciousness, our old way of being. Things will never be the same again. There is no way to recreate what was 3 months ago into what's going to be like 3 months from now. So that might be a little difficult, but there's this great promise, this vision that in truth we are birthing something new, something that can be kinder, more powerful, more connected than anything we ever could have imagined happening in our lives before, all those things that we have prayed for. So that's this week. I really invite you into that spiritual practice to, again, embracing our fears, that in truth they might be transformed into hope, transformed into that greater possibility beyond our imagination, so that that reflection of the divine in and through us is the most it can possibly be. Be brave, overcome the world. God bless. Namaste. I'm going to share my screen here. Oh, no, I'm not. Different computer on that. But I do want to say that this is a time that we do celebrate our prosperity. We have many gifts. I was just talking to my daughter today about how grateful we really are, my family, that we all of us have a roof over our head, food over our head, and we all happen to be working right now. I know not everybody is. But we do so appreciate those people that are still supporting us financially with this ministry, to keep it going, to keep our programs, be able to Zoom together for our meetings, and just to keep everything taken care of. We so appreciate that. And certainly, if you are inclined to give us gifts, you can donate on our website. And of course, checks come through the mail too. That's another way of doing it. The one thing we're not doing right now is taking cash, because we have no way of doing that. So this, we're into the second quarter, and a portion, we are a tithing ministry, and a portion of our tithes for this quarter are going to Haven House. That's helping Lansing area families help themselves. So know that part of whatever you give to Unity of Lansing will also be supporting them, as well as Silent Unity, Unity Worldwide Ministries, Unity World Headquarters. So thank you in advance for your gifts. And let's just take a moment to bless them together. And though we are not physically giving right now, we are lovingly giving right now as we open our hearts and just allow that energy to flow around us and connect us in marvelous, compassionate ways that we can do because our hearts are softening. And so we bless our gifts together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, and is a blessing wherever it goes. Thank you. God bless. And if you'd like to have a meditation, look for part 3 of today's service, Palm Sunday meditation. Join us then.